The old has already ended, but the new has not yet arrived. And it is during this gap that you do what you cannot later explain to yourself. You return to what you have long since left. Why does this happen? And what is really being decided in this emptiness? There is a moment in life that is almost impossible to describe accurately. Not a crisis, not a loss, not change itself. It is the interval, when the old no longer works, and the next has not yet revealed itself. Everything seems to be in place, but there is no support. And at this point, almost everyone does the same thing. Reaches out for the familiar, to old habits, old people, old decisions. Not because they fit, but because they are known. This video is about what happens to those who stay in this gap without running away. What changes when you stop demanding an immediate answer from yourself? And why, right here, at the most uncomfortable point, life can become fuller than it was before. Transitional states are uncomfortable not because something is going wrong in them. They are uncomfortable because there is nothing to control. There is no clear next step, no guarantee, not even a discernible direction. And most people at this point do not stop to figure out what is happening. They accelerate. They fill the space with anything: unripe solutions, unnecessary relationships, work that only distracts. Familiar mechanisms trigger quickly. The brain perceives uncertainty as a threat and suggests what has worked before, or at least seemed to work. This is not a weakness or a character flaw. It is a very precise, very human response to a situation where there is no map or compass. The problem is that familiar and correct are different things. When you are in the gap, choosing the familiar solution almost always means returning to where you just came from. Not because it is the best path, but because it is at least understandable. This is how people get stuck, not in the crisis itself, but in their reaction to it. Those who navigate this gap differently do something that seems almost illogical. They do not rush to fill the void. They remain with the question, not requiring an answer right now. Not because it is easier for them, but because somewhere inside a guess arises. What is happening now is not a mistake. It is part of something that has not yet shown its form. And here is the question to ask yourself honestly. When was the last time you allowed yourself not to know, and at the same time did not try to immediately fix it? The return to the old, in the interval between the old and the new, does not happen out of weakness of will. It happens because the brain, in conditions of uncertainty, does only one thing. It seeks a pattern that has been launched and completed before. Incompleteness is perceived as danger, while a familiar scenario serves as proof that an outcome is at least possible. Not a good outcome, just any outcome. Imagine a person who has just ended a relationship or left a job where they spent several years. The first days bring relief. Then something else sets in. Not nostalgia for the previous place, but rather the feeling that the ground beneath their feet has become soft. There is no familiar schedule, no role they played every day, not even a clear irritant to react to. And at this point, a very quiet, almost imperceptible drift back begins. Not a return with suitcases, but small movements. An old message is reread. A resume is sent to a position that is worse than the previous one, but at least it is understandable. The person rationalizes this to themselves, but behind the explanation is not reason, but discomfort from a state that has no name. Here it is important to understand one thing. The intermediate state is not like a crisis. In a crisis, there is a specific problem, and this provides structure. You look for a solution. In the interval, there is neither a clear problem nor a recognizable solution. There is only lack of support. And it is this lack that the brain interprets as a signal to act, even though the situation does not require any urgent action. The typical mistake here is not that a person returns to the old. The mistake is that they take the desire to return as confirmation of the correctness of the previous path. Since I feel drawn back, there must have been something real there, but it works differently. The pull back is not because it was better there, but because it was understandable. These are different things, and the interval makes them appear similar. Another layer of this trap: familiar mechanisms activate quickly, while new ones form slowly. If a person has coped with anxiety for years through busyness, through task lists, overworking, constant movement, then at the moment when there is no movement, anxiety returns instantly. And the same response is automatically activated. Urgently find something to fill it with. Not because it helps, but because the neural pathway has been laid and requires the least effort. This is not inherently bad, it is just mechanics. The problem is that in the interval, such mechanics do not allow the interval to do its work. And the interval has its work. It is not just an empty space between two states. Something happens in it that cannot be rushed. Old settings lose their obviousness. Familiar reactions become more noticeable because there is nothing around to reinforce them. It is precisely here that one can see what has actually governed the choices of recent years, but only if this space is not filled immediately. The question to hold on to: if the familiar and the right are different things, then how do you distinguish one from the other when there are neither landmarks nor clarity of direction? Most people are convinced that uncertainty is a temporary state that should be resolved as quickly as possible, that enduring it means wasting time, that if you do not move for a long time, you will fall behind, miss out, lose your shape. But this belief is what drives people to make decisions that they later have to undo. Haste in the interim is not moving forward. It is moving sideways to avoid standing still. There is an observation from sports practice that illustrates this well. When an athlete suffers a serious injury and is forced to stop for several months, the first reaction is almost always the same: an immediate desire to return to training ahead of schedule. Not because the body is ready, but because immobility is perceived as regression. Those who succumb to this impulse usually suffer a repeated injury. Those who endure the period without training fully return with a different body, not just restored, but often more aware in movement. The pause did something that years of training did not. The interval between the old and the new works in a similar way, although it is not about the body, but about reference points. When familiar supports disappear, it becomes clear which of them were actually holding something real and which were just taking up space. The illusions mentioned in day text are not deceit from the outside. They are our own simplifications that help to move faster without asking unnecessary questions. I know what I want. This path is right. This format of life suits me. As long as everything works, these formulations seem obvious. In the interim, they suddenly cease to be self-evident. And this is uncomfortable, but it is honest. Staying in this state with open attention does not mean passivity. It is a very active effort, not to close the question before an answer that truly changes something appears. Not just any answer, but one that arises not from the fear of emptiness, but from real, new understanding. The difference between them is physically palpable. One comes with the relief of finally resolved. The other, with something quieter that is difficult to confuse with relief. And here is what happens to those who remain in the interim long enough without running away. They begin to notice what was previously hidden by the habitual rhythm. Not global revelations, rather concrete shifts. It turns out that some commitments that seemed important were only important because our self-esteem depended on them. That some relationships existed because of shared busyness, not real contact. That some goals were someone else's, simply well absorbed. This does not come as a crisis. It comes as a gradual manifestation, when the noise quiets down by itself. But enduring the interim does not mean waiting passively for something to clarify itself. There is one specific sign that distinguishes productive staying in uncertainty from simple stagnation. When a person is stuck, they constantly return to the same question, replaying it, but the answer does not change. When a person is in the interim and working with it, the questions themselves change. One question gives way to another, more precise. This is movement. It just happens internally. What exactly are you willing to let go of? And how to know that this is not capitulation, but real liberation? It is easier to distinguish surrender from liberation than it seems if you look not at the decision itself, but at where it comes from. Surrender comes with the feeling of, just let it be over. Liberation comes with the feeling of, this is no longer mine. The difference is not in the act, but in what lies behind it: anxiety or a real readiness to move on without this burden. The smallest step that works here is to catch the moment when your hand is already reaching for the familiar scenario and pause for just one question. Not, am I doing the right thing? But, am I reaching for this because it suits me or because it's uncomfortable without it? This is not an analysis for an hour. It's one question at a specific moment. Imagine, someone you've long since figured out writes to you. Your hand instinctively reaches to respond in the usual warm way, because that's how it has always been. Stop for a second and ask yourself this question. The answer will come quickly, and it will be honest, because you didn't give yourself time to rationalize it. This is the work with the gap, not global decisions, but pinpoint pauses before automatic reactions. To understand if this works, check yourself on two signs. After you have stopped and still did not go along the habitual scenario, did relief appear, or did anxiety increase? If relief, you have let go of something real. If anxiety grew, you faced what you were avoiding, and this is also useful information, not a failure. In the next 24 hours, there will definitely be a moment when you feel like filling the emptiness in the familiar way. Opening a chat, accepting an offer without thinking, returning to a task you've already moved away from. It is at this moment that one question is needed. Not a half-day pause, not meditation, not a values breakdown. One question, and an honest answer to yourself. If you start doing this regularly, the questions that concern you will start to change. One will give way to another, more precise one. This is what it means for the gap to do its work. The gap between the old and new is not a long pause or a time to endure. It's the only moment when you can see what from the past was real and what was merely habitual. And that's why it's so uncomfortable. Everything that helped avoid asking real questions disappears. The main thing that changes for those who go through it without escaping is not new answers. It's different questions. When you stop demanding immediate clarity from yourself, something more precise than a plan emerges. An understanding of what you are already ready to leave behind, and a sense of which direction to move in, even if there's still no map. The next time your hand reaches for a familiar scenario when there's no support, you will already have one specific question. That's enough to prevent the gap from turning into a loop. If this video turned out to be helpful, subscribe to the channel. The next episode will be out soon.